Dear testers, I welcome you back to our second day of the 6th edition of our TestCon conference. If you haven't got a chance to meet me yesterday, my name is Jonas. I'm currently the managing director of AskUI, with which we try to humanize test automation. And furthermore, I'm the organizer of the software testing meetup in Karlsruhe, and I'm grateful to be your host today. So first of all, let's check how it was yesterday for you. So in the chat, please enter what you liked most, and let's see if we can get some great answers. I hope the delay is not too bad. All right, so let's wait for a few seconds. We get something in. All right, I will wait for 30 seconds, and then I will check again. So I already mentioned yesterday, but I believe also this conference is so relevant because of the fast transformation of software development processes right now. So we have ongoing trends in automation, and we are changing environments so fast. The testing is also adapting. So the TestCon is the place to be when it comes to those developments. Furthermore, I just love the testing community. You guys are all great. So, and we got some answers. So it seems like the panel discussion was really liked. I agree a lot. So, and also Phil was the greatest with the keynote. We have a talk later with Phil again. So I'm sure we'll have the chance to check in again. Awesome. So let's go ahead. So today we are live streaming to more than 17 different countries. Thank you all for joining. We are not meeting on site as usual. However, we expect the 2021 online edition just to be as good as it was before. For this purpose, we are using this advanced event platform, which I'm sure you are familiar right now with. So which allows us to live stream sessions, engage with each other through live chat, check schedule, get to know all the speakers as well as attendees at this conference. What is more, you can visit our sponsors at their virtual booth and of course get help through the help desk if you got lost in this colorful environment. All of the virtual event platform possibilities you can explore during the breaks. We will also have a special slide for you explaining the different platform functions. This year's track will be moderated by different and well-known testing experts who will do their best to make your conference experience as enjoyable as possible. And moving forward, this year we also have great sponsors who I'm very grateful to introduce to you. One of them is Accenture, and this is what they say about themselves. Accenture is a leading global professional services company providing a broad range of services and solutions in strategy, consulting, digital, tech, and operations. Combining unmatched experience and specialized skills across more than 40 industries and all business functions, underpinned by the world's largest delivery network, Accenture works at the intersection of business and technology to help clients improve their performance and create sustainable value for their stakeholders. Another sponsor is Metasite. At Metasite, they do bespoke digital financial platforms and applications design, engineering, integration, and support for financial industry leaders and rising fintechs across Europe. The company consists of technology professionals who believe in the power of a dynamic, flat hierarchy culture, constantly explore the latest IT trends and tools, and enjoy working in autonomous teams. Their financial system architects, software developers, UI designers, QA engineers, analysts, and PMs offer a rare combination of deep understanding of the financial services domain and bespoke engineering excellence. We also have a knowledge sponsor, Pact, who will award the most active big data conference attendees with an ebook of their choice. Participate actively during the conference, rate the sessions, and win a book from Pact. After the conference, the most active attendees will be selected and be given a chance to choose an ebook from the wide range of Pact books. So again, same for yesterday, take action and win. And our last sponsor is Wix Engineering. Wix Engineering develops some of the most innovative cloud-based web applications that influence more than 160 million users worldwide. What is more, make sure you check the schedule and join your favorite sessions or panel discussions. Almost last thing for me. So I would like to encourage you to be as interactive as possible during the conference, focus and enjoy. The lineup this year is so amazing. I bet you know that already from yesterday. So, and now that's it from me. I would like to introduce you to our opening keynote, PJ Hagerty. So, hello, PJ. PJ is a developer advocate, founder of DevRelate.io, and member of Open Sourcing Mental Illness. He's also developer, writer, speaker, musician, and community advocate. Currently, he's the head of developer relations at MetaMost. So I'm really excited to have you here today, PJ, and are really looking forward to getting a lot of insights today. So have a nice opening session, everyone.
Awesome. Jonas, thank you so much. I'm so glad to be here. I was super excited. I was kind of hoping when we first talked that I would be there in person. Unfortunately not, but maybe next year. We can always hope for next year, right? So thanks everybody for coming to my session. Today I'm going to do a little thing about kind of how things work and how things get started. The talk is called the Pony Express. It's called the Pony Express and how technology moves fast. Unless I'm wrong, you should be seeing my first slide. If that's the case, then cool. We have technology is working, so we're already in the right place. So let me tell you a little bit about myself. So as mentioned, my name is PJ Hagerty. I'm a developer advocate, and if you don't know what a developer advocate is, that means I pre-COVID used to be able to travel the world, going to conferences like yours, everywhere to talk about innovation, open source, development, testing, DevOps, pretty much anything that interested me and interested other people, I would do that. I've been all over the world. I've been very lucky. A lot of these places, I'm lucky enough to do some karaoke, make friends along the way, take some pictures, and some other things about me. I'm a musician. I've been a practicing musician since I was about 13 years old. So that's more or less forever at this point in time. I also, have a couple kids. I coached ice hockey for many years with my son. And at one point I did let my 11-year-old daughter keynote the largest Ruby conference in the world. So that's a little bit about me. Let's talk a little bit about where it is that I work. So I work for Mattermost. Mattermost is an open source platform for secure communication, collaboration, and orchestration of work across tools and teams. So it's open source. You build it the way that you want it. You can add integrations. It's also, you can have it on-prem or in the cloud. It's up to you. But that's not the real reason we're here. I mean, they're the folks that pay me to get up this early in the morning. It is, by the way, 2 o'clock in the morning where I'm from, Buffalo, New York. So it would only be fair, since they pay me to do it, that I mention, who they are and what they do. But what we're actually here to do is talk about innovation. And I'm going to take you on a little bit of a history lesson. Now, I know that this is a conference in Europe. So I don't know how many people actually watch Westerns or the modern take on the romantic idea of American Western movement. Um, in the late 1800s, we became obsessed with this idea called manifest destiny. We wanted to start, basically from the east coast of the United States and go all the way to the western side of the United States. Um, and there's a very romantic idea behind this. There's cowboys and the way things went. Good guys always wore white hats and they always won the day. And everything west of the Mississippi River was lawless. And there were bank robbers, and some of them weren't such bad people. Some of them kind of cheered for them. And the Pony Express was how the mail got delivered. Now, if you've ever read a Western novel or watched a movie like, Young Guns or any cowboy movie, we accept a lot of this as fact. Not just as Americans, but just as, people that take in entertainment. These are dearly held beliefs that have been allowed to become the stories that we build other stories upon. But if we look closely, and it doesn't even have to be that closely, there's some holes in the story. And some of them are actually really big. So let's talk about the Pony Express and how that worked. So going back in the US to before the Civil War, some people decided to head out west to seek their fortunes. At the time, the United States was trying to achieve this manifest destiny goal, expanding from the East Coast to the West Coast. For some people, this meant an incredible opportunity. Maybe you wanted to find some farmland. Maybe you wanted to establish new freedoms that you'd never had before. Maybe there was gold lying in the hills across America, which was true. When prospectors who had gone all the way out to the west coast of the United States found gold on the California coast, towns began to pop up all along that coast. It was necessary for people, not just regular people, but companies who owned land or paid prospectors and families of these adventurous souls to get their mail as quickly as possible. Now, these remote locations, and at the time they were remote, San Francisco was the middle of nowhere, they started to grow. Between the years 1848 and 1860, the population of California grew from 380,000 people. I'm sorry, grew from a handful of people to 380,000 people. Now, with our modern cities, that doesn't sound like a lot, but we're talking about in the 1800s. There wasn't really even electricity yet. There wasn't a phone. There wasn't anything to do. There was no internet. How did these people live? What did they do all day? That's a question for another talk. But there were very few ways to get information from one end of the country to the other. So a new solution had to be found. Now, some of you are probably saying, but PJ, we know this is America. You had trains, in 1848. That's how you got around. I mean, that's not inaccurate. Well, railroads could get messages a good portion of the way across the continent. They couldn't make it much further than Missouri, which is about in the middle. When we gained New Mexico and Arizona as states in 1853, we could only just start to consider bringing the coast together via rail. And let's be honest, the railroad back then was no guarantee of speed or safety. It's kind of like having a server in a closet being maintained by someone with a general idea of how to run Linux or Ubuntu and making their own Cat5 cables on the side just for kicks. And all of these Cat5 cables were easily entwined in unsafe ways throughout the closet. And there was no ventilation. And you had to hope there was never a fire or any danger. I think we all know where I'm going with this. We've all seen that kind of server closet. Unsafe, unstable. The trains were prone to robbery. The railroad could not be the right answer for this growing country. Now, add to all of this aggravating edge case is a convenient way to say it. A small inconvenience on the understanding of who was doing all the work. So some people wanted to bring the country together to support our freedoms. And I'm not even talking about, capital F freedom like we like to see on the news nowadays. I'm just talking about the ability to live free in any way. But other folks, and this might sound familiar to what's going on today, other folks wanted to remain on top of the pile by oppressing other human beings. War was on the horizon. If we wanted to continue to be successful, if we wanted to move forward as a country, we needed a way to communicate quickly. So on the eve of the American Civil War, the Pony Express was born. Think of it this way. A network was built. They needed a way to communicate. In order to do that, they needed to build their own network. Riders, who were generally young, often orphans or escaped slaves, would be hired to ride like the wind. The Pony Express began its ride on April 3rd, 1860. Suddenly, you could get a message from New York City to San Francisco in just 10 days. Miracle of modern communication. Sure, that sounds completely appalling, but if you consider the alternative of having someone travel with that or a stagecoach or something along those lines, it would take probably months to get a letter from New York City to San Francisco. 10 days is a huge jump. It was an order of magnitude better than what they had. So if we've learned anything from the movies about the Pony Express, it's about how ubiquitous and long-lasting it was. Seems like every Western I've ever seen, probably any Western we've put out in the modern world, there's some reference to the Pony Express. There's some, kid on a horse coming in and say, "Oh, we've got it. We can let you know what's going on." There have been movies and television shows dedicated to these brave riders and their horses, flying across the plains of the United States, outwitting dangerous animals, bandits, and Native Americans who were kind of upset that we kept taking their land and territories, kind of on the side of the Native Americans at that point in time. The Pony Express was a paragon of innovation in April of 1860. Now, ask yourself, this amazing thing, this brilliant piece of history, how long did it last? And this is when we find out exactly how many people read the little thing that says what I was going to talk about. This great technique for moving messages from coast to coast was outdated after a year and a half, 18 months. The needs of the people and the speed of technology overtook the Western riders. So instead of innovation, the Pony Express was really just a stopgap method. It would have remained a footnote in American history were it not for these things that they called petty dreadfuls back in the day. And that raised the Pony Express and its riders to heroic status. It's all about who writes the story. A simple device at the right time, a time when war was starting and communication needed to move faster than ever before, can make all the difference. All this culminated in the end of the Pony Express after 18 months of operation. As a side note, think of the Telegraph and the Pony Express the next time you have a conversation about machines replacing people. Automation is not a new issue. When's the last time you tipped an elevator operator? When's the last time you had someone open the door for you and that's their whole job? Now we have sensors. They just do it themselves. There's no need. So if the Pony Express was a stopgap, how long did the Telegraph last? I mean, really, how long could it last? Funny you should ask. Perhaps you've heard of a British person. It was a guy sometimes called the father of modern computer science. In World War II, about 80 years after the Civil War, Alan Turing was in England trying to decipher telegraph messages that were encoded using the above machine. So this is known as the Enigma. If you haven't ever seen Enigma, it's pretty cool. There's a whole movie about like how he used the Enigma to fix, how he figured out the Enigma. It's called The Imitation Game. It's vaguely accurate. It's a pretty good movie. No Pony Express riders. Sorry. But this was used to encrypt and decrypt messages sent via telegraph. Some pieces of technology last a long time. Others fade quickly or have limited use and disappear. We see this all the time in the world of application development. We see it all the time. Unless all of you plan to share your thoughts on this talk on your Bebo page or maybe on your live journal, we can see how quickly applications move. So let's take a look at some of the things that we see in our everyday life, some of the things that have lasting power and some things that don't. Maybe we can speculate on what has that staying power and what's more of a flash in the pan. You may have heard the term flash in the pan, by the way, before, and it is literally a term from the 1849 gold prospecting reference in which you'd get some dirt, you would flash it into the sun, and you would look to see if anything sparkled. And if there was a flash in the pan, that was actually a good thing. Now we say it is more of a negative. But I digress. We'll take a break from all these references to the late 1800s in the United States and take a look at some of the other things that are going on in the modern world. Let's talk a little bit about tech philosophy. We'll start with a quick philosophy lesson. Philosophies around technology are not a new phenomenon. Whether it's the idea that mainframe computing is the only true computer science solution, to the idea that DevOps can be certified and assigned as a team, there's never been a shortage of ideologies that accompany the work that we do. Most philosophies are really meant as kind of best practices, kind of a guideline to allow our work to flow easily and produce better applications, because that's really our job, or to run better networks or data centers on Earth, in the cloud, whatever. The idea is to make it more easy for us to do our jobs. Some are only suggestions because something worked on my machine, so it must work for everyone else. But if we take a look at some of these common modern era philosophies, we can see what their strengths are and where the pitfalls might be. So let's start with the idea of waterfall. Waterfall is probably one of the most well-known and much maligned development methods in the world today. How many of you have been involved in an organization using the waterfall technique? Now, I can't see you. Feel free to raise your hands at home or say something in the chat. We'll count the votes later. But for those of you who don't know, and this is actually something I've noticed, I've talked to people about waterfall before, and I realized that apparently a lot of younger developers don't know what that is. So if you don't know what waterfall is, don't feel bad. It's okay. Here's the definition, and I'm going to use my definition voice. The waterfall model is a relatively linear sequential design approach for certain areas of engineering design. In software development, it tends to be among the less iterative and flexible approaches, as progress flows largely in one direction, downwards like a waterfall, through the phases of conception, initiation, analysis, design, construction, testing, deployment, and maintenance. I mean, if you didn't know the waterfall philosophy was brutal, that definition is brutal. Pretty thorough, though, for an idea that was developed in the 1950s. So just 10 years after Turing was dealing with the telegraph, we're trying to find engineering techniques in computer science through philosophy. It was innovative for its time, but even shortly after this, people really began to see the flaws. By the way, the picture that you're looking at for the waterfall is Niagara Falls, which is it's about maybe 10, 15 minutes away from my house. Very impressive, probably one of the most well-known waterfalls in the world. And it's important to know that that's Niagara Falls for a later reason. So keep that in mind. So waterfall is simple. As our programming teams begin to build applications for business and scientific inquiry, we needed to establish a way to do so in an organized way. Is it in any way surprising that our first thought was to take page from modern manufacturing techniques at the time. To build a car, you establish requirements. You design it using those requirements. You build the car. You test to see if the car works. Then maybe you do some maintenance when it's out in the world. You change the oil and windshield wipers and tires and whatnot. Easy, right? Why wouldn't software work in the same rigid way? I mean, it should just go along, correct? The problem with this philosophy is that, like so many first ideas, like the Pony Express, it's short-sightedness. What works in one industry does not necessarily work for another. It's just not the way it goes. In a few minutes, we'll discuss the agile methodology, much of which focuses on the concept of lean, which is also an idea that was brought over from Japan's car manufacturers. There's a difference in how these ideas were adopted. For agile, we borrowed. With waterfall, we just took the whole thing. We basically said, this works here as a template, let's just apply it to something else. That's not how it goes. Waterfall has no iteration. There's no feedback loop. There's no structure for movement outside of the specs. There's not really any testing at all. You just kind of put it in the world and hope for the best. Most people know when an organization is not flexible that it spells doom. Waterfall was a doomed philosophy before it got off the ground. But parts of it are still used to this day in large-scale corporations. And I'm talking about your big ones. Not necessarily your Googles or your Facebooks, because those are more modern. But there's some, other oracular and blue companies that are using such methodologies today. No need to name names. So let's talk about another philosophy. Let's talk about agile. Agile is more modern, more widely accepted, especially in the world of tech today. While the word conjures up images that may or may not work along with the ideas of the philosophy, let's define it before we make any decisions on what we actually think agile is. So again, in the definition voice. Agile is an approach to software development under which requirements and solutions evolve through the collaborative effort of self-organizing and cross-functional teams and their customers or end users. It advocates adaptive planning, evolutionary development, early delivery, and continual improvement. It encourages rapid and flexible response to change. This sounds amazing. After Waterfall, come on, this sounds great. Self-organizing teams, iterative development, customer input. What could possibly go wrong? Agile is the space age solution. Everything we're looking for is there. Iteration, collaboration, flexibility. At the advent of Agile, which was, by the way, believe it or not, in the 1970s, 20 years after Waterfall, the whole idea that Agile came along in 2007, along with Rails and Ruby, way off base, 1970s. But even back then, there still wasn't much of an adherence to a software development philosophy. Most software was still built in and for large-scale corporations. Computers weren't common in homes. Even entertainment systems like ColecoVision and Atari were only coming into being. This was the very beginning. Agile was a sleepy philosophy for a while, just kind of a bedroom philosophy. Then, as more modern application development and deployment grew in the 90s, especially with the advent of open source, it's a huge key here, it began to take off. It really began to innovate things in the way people looked at them. We couldn't just apply, though, the normal manufacturing techniques to building and deploying software. We needed real-world ways that applied to the problem at hand, something modern and different. And Agile is an amazing modern workflow with a few caveats. And the caveats really come from the peripherals. Things like Scrum and Kanban are cool, but these add-ons aren't really necessary and don't really contribute to the success of a team. Agile means flexible. If your team can work without the overhead of complicated necessities like daily stand-ups and raft teams, believe it or not, I'm going to advocate for the fact that daily stand-ups are not necessary. We can fight about this on the internet. Not necessary. Check-ins, sure. Stand-ups, no. Raft teams, definitely not. Agile can work for you, but with any philosophy, zealotry and strict adherence stagnates growth. And I'll tell you a story. One of the first dev shops I worked in that decided to adopt Agile, this is way back in the aughts, kids, decided that we needed to be so agile that we had to follow every single point of the Agile Manifesto. And you're welcome to go read the Agile Manifesto if you're interested. But there are some caveats that people didn't realize were in there that even Martin Fowler doesn't agree with, and he wrote the thing. One of them was that everyone should be using the same, in order to be properly agile, everyone should be using the same platform. But at the time, I was using a Mac, and my coworker who was on my team was using Linux, and a couple of the other guys were actually running things on Windows. So we didn't have the wherewithal, we didn't even have the money to change the way that we were doing things to make sure that everybody was using the thing. I used, believe it or not, this is going to be shocking to some people, I used Notepad. That's what I used to code Ruby code in. I eventually moved to TextMate. Again, one of the other guys was using JetBrains. Somebody else had a different IDE. If we really wanted to be agile, we were always supposed to be using the same things. If you strictly follow the rules, you don't always get a good outcome. What you get is a bunch of grumpy programmers. Not always great. So yeah, if you need to follow the rules strictly, it's not very flexible. It's not very agile. As a great bonus, though, agile led us to something new. That's DevOps. And I'm not going to go into this too deeply because it's not. I don't think it's really necessary. But DevOps, definition voice. DevOps is a set of software development practices that combine software development, dev, and information technology operations, ops, to shorten the system's development lifecycle while delivering features, fixes, and updates frequently in close alignment with business objectives. Different disciplines collaborate, making quality everyone's job. All right, personally, this is a great definition. Compared to the other two definitions, super clear, makes sense. It's really what the other philosophies are striving for as far as how tech should function in all the best parts of Agile, a few of the little good ideas of Waterfall sprinkled in. And you apply this to all the teams across the organization. And this is the thing, we are at TestCon. This is the first time QA and testing is even included in a philosophy. DevOps is kind of a big deal for everyone here. Everyone's part of the conversation. Everyone's responsible. This is our modern answer to how best to deliver software. Mobile, web, OSs, doesn't really matter. We've learned from the past, and this is what we have. This is innovation in the philosophy section. DevOps, according to some, should be the end-all of development. We introduce the concepts of interaction with developers, ops, testing. We add in all of the QA team. It's a great cycle. Like, what do we focus on? We focus on automation. DevOps goals, according to some, is to automate as much as possible to remove risk. So if you can do things like take all your browser testing, all your front-end testing, and put it in Selenium so that you can walk through it, you remove risk. You remove the human error. That's good. I mean, isn't that what really happened to the Pony Express? We needed messages to move faster. We needed to be safer and not get robbed along the way. So instead of doing it manually on horseback, we automated it. We built a system that made the old system less useful. Makes one wonder if part of the point of DevOps is to make DevOps unnecessary. Like all theories, DevOps is great in theory. Everyone works happily together. And now that we have DevOps, right? I mean, all the problems are resolved and we all get along and the world is at peace and all of our applications work perfectly. And we're all, building spaceships so that we can go join Richard Branson and Jeff Bezos on Mars in a couple of years. Like, woo, awesome. DevOps. It works 60% of the time, every time. Like Waterfall and Agile before it, DevOps has one major downfall, and it's based on the perfect world idea. In a perfect world, all of these things work. When faced with the reality of a modern organization functioning at modern speed, a lot of these things fall down. This doesn't mean we should abandon hope, but we need to see where these philosophies work and where they don't. We need to take our organization's perspective into account and understand what we're trying to do, to achieve our goals. We need to be critical of the things we do and find the parts that don't work. Now, all things in tech are in constant evolution, not just philosophies. But let's talk a little bit about a philosophy that's going to hit close to home. Let's talk about how development is driven. Let's talk about test-driven development. Behind all of this is all, how do we build things? How does the infrastructure team work? How does the QA team work? These are all ideas that come through. The first one we'll talk about is test-driven development. For those of you who don't know, and I kind of expect that all of you do, this is a concept that everything you build, software, hardware, application infrastructure, database, must be thoroughly tested before going out into the world. This is a great idea, right? This is the best idea ever, especially because this is, testing comp. We're so concerned about QA. We want it all to go. There's just the one tiny drawback. then everything takes twice as long to build. Additionally, since you never really know how people are going to use it, you can't test everything out before it goes out into the world. It can be needlessly pedantic. So I'm not saying abandon testing, but let's look at it from a different perspective. Maybe behavior-driven development is better. Unlike test-driven development, behavior-driven development is based on how users interact with and break the things we do. Kind of sounds like a testing concept, but also kind of applying DevOps. So forward thinking, right? Let's see how users do things and build what we need based on that information. Brilliant. Less time spent than TDD, right? Maybe. It also leaves a huge possibility for failing over and over and over again. Luckily, from the BDD movement, we have DevOps culture that's been able to adapt and adopt the concepts of chaos engineering. If you don't know what chaos engineering is, this is the idea that we can break things before they go out into the real world and see how they work. The most famous chaos engineering experiment was done at Netflix, where Netflix decided on a Friday night, which is the number one night for people to watch Netflix around the world, they dropped half of their production servers. If that's not testing, I don't know what is. They saw what behavior happened. They saw how many customers were affected. They saw how many people made a phone call, which, by the way, was 0. No one picked up the phone. No one complained. They had made their systems resilient enough, but the only way to see that they were was to test them live and in production, which is mad crazy, right? Chaos engineering is only for the brave of heart. However, it's a great way to do things and understand exactly how things are going to work in the real world. It's great. It's behavior-based. So even some of these misguided philosophies or crazy ideas, we can sometimes cull some good out of them. I like to think that what really goes on in the world in every organization and every team is the idea of shame-driven development. People only write as many unit tests as they can get away with so that the next developer doesn't think they skipped it altogether. The ops person is only going to take as much time setting up physical hardware so that it seems their time was worth it and what the company thinks it should be worth. The site reliability engineer holds everything together with duct tape and bubble gum, but documents a well-running system. And believe me, if you think that testing is important, documenting your tests is 10 times as important as running the test itself. Whether we're talking DevOps or Agile or Waterfall, what have you, we generally build things so that we won't be shamed by the next person to see it. This is the truth of where most things live in the world of tech today. Kind of like how the Pony Express was built good enough for what the United States needed at the time. We innovate, but often we focus on the concept of minimal viable product, minimal viable work, minimal viable setup, minimal viable. So what we're saying is what gets us not to over the line, but just to the line, and then just kind of limp over it. Minimal and viable shouldn't be the way we look at things when we innovate. Then, of course, there's the language we develop in. So we had all these philosophies and ideals about how we drive development, all these ways to do things. And then, these things come up. People have language wars still. And it seems like this is less and less important as time marches on, though. Compiled languages versus non-compiled. Open source versus enterprise languages like C++ or .NET. We're seeing now a return to functional programming languages and functional practices, while also seeing the growth of so many JavaScript tools focused on building single-page web applications. These choices lead to things like not needing a proper server, deploying a GitHub page with Jekyll or Middleman or Gatsby.js. You don't even need an ops team, right? But these aren't innovations so much as iterations on the same old circle of concepts. We aren't building new things. We're just solving the same problems in different ways. Think about this as you're looking at the ways to build things. We strive to keep moving forward, right? Testing is the way that we do things. That's our current Pony Express. DevOps is the current Pony Express. Will it last longer? Will it become the telegraph of its philosophical generation? When we think of the word innovation, we think of building something new, discovering some new territory. And we've done that by bringing teams together toward the common goal. Having QA teams in the first place was an innovation. These things take us a step further by getting rid of accoutrements like Agile and all the rules and saying, hey, we all have the same goal. Let's work together to reach it. That's more important, right? That's innovation. That's writing to outlast the competition. Technology moves really fast. We need to learn, adapt, and innovate if we hope to keep up. So we see things come and go. We see ideas. We see innovation built on failure. Philosophy has grown from simple adopted ideas, concept borrowed from somewhere else, and then retrofitted to our needs. We see that what was the best solution today might be outdated tomorrow. When adopting things like DevOps culture or agile ideals, we seek to find the best solution to our teams and our development, in our ops environment, our QA environment, our testing environments, and the way that we build applications. We should never accept any of these ideas blindly. We have to question every step of the way in order to innovate. We shouldn't be worried about minimal viable product. We should be worried about minimal valuable product. What makes things valuable to the people that are going to use the things that we build? That's what we should be testing for. That's what we should be building philosophies for. At some point, there's a young man on a horse racing across the hills of California to deliver a message. He never read it. That wasn't his job. And as a matter of fact, the chances that he even could read were probably very slim. His job was to deliver. That message read, Telegraph service reaches San Francisco. Pony Express retired. Every point of our job in technology is to innovate and build. We continue to do so knowing that the future is our goal, not the nearby goal, the far-reaching goal. We want to build things better. We want to build things for the future. And with that, let's innovate. Thank you very much, and I'm happy to take any questions. Stop sharing my screen so I can see questions.
All right. Thank you so much. Super interesting talk. I guess I'm guilty of like doing a few things you mentioned.
Just to point, the point of the talk is not to make people feel guilty, but to let you know that everything always can change. There's a pivot for everything.
Yeah, so actually waterfall, like I'm like on the younger side, I guess, here from the audience, but we actually learned in our studies the waterfall model in QA, which is, I find quite interesting. All right, so we have some questions right now. So the first one, can you share experience or ideas for validate the feature software solution with the user?
Yeah, I mean, there's things that you can actually do directly. I've worked with companies that bring in users. I mean, obviously this was pre-COVID, but bring in users either virtually or into the office and say, hey, listen, so we have this feature set. And you kind of do the A/B testing live with them and say, here you go. We're trying to build to see how easy it is for you to figure out that we're going to build a communication tool. We're going to build a chat bot. Can I DM Jonas? How easy is that? How many clicks do I have to take? You can do it directly, or you can kind of do it as a feature flag set using something like LaunchDarkly or Split.io, where you send it out into the world and only certain people are going to get it, but you can get the metrics and feedback from that to see what people find useful and what they don't.
Yeah. So I guess there are a lot of ways actually. So I know paper prototyping or stuff like that. You can you can even validate ideas with that. So I feel like, all right, we have another questions. So from Alexei, thank you for your presentation, first of all. So if you are a company, have a question, if you are a company that has its own testers and operations, what is your opinion on the best way to organize the DevOps philosophy?
Okay, there's like 4 questions,
yeah.
Alexei.
Yeah, wow. Like a lot of questions. So maybe we can go through them like step by step.
Absolutely. So our company that has its own testers operation. Yes. So at Mattermost, we actually have 2 sets of testers and ops. We have our QA team, which does testing and quality assurance to make sure everything is working the way that it should. And then we also have community contributors to QA, where they actually come in, find tickets, test features as users outside of the company. So they're actually like out in the community and they volunteer to help us QA the product. With operations, we have a dedicated DevOps team. We actually also have a DevSecOps team. To ensure that everything's working and properly. It's a little bit different because with Mattermost, a vast majority of our clients use it on premise, so they're not using it in the cloud. So we don't have like a tremendous amount of servers, but we do have a team dedicated to all of our cloud instances and assuring that they can troubleshoot remotely when someone installs the application outside of behind a firewall or in a space that's a little more difficult to get to. Let's see. What's your opinion on the best way to organize the DevOps philosophy? First of all, is to internalize it yourself. That's step one. Once you internalize it and have an understanding of how that's going to work within your organization, you start to share that message. You kind of become a DevOps evangelist. You come in and you're like, hey, I saw PJ do this talk about DevOps, and it was really cool. And as a matter of fact, it's recorded. We could watch it together. Maybe we could do like a little watch session and talk about how we can improve DevOps in what we're doing every day. And you just take it. It's incrementally. It's iterative. Every step of the way, a little bit more, a little bit more. But you start with simple things like saying, hey, I, as a developer, I, as a QA person, I, as a tester, I, as an ops person, should know what everyone else is doing. Can we establish one meeting a week where everybody talks about how things are going? And usually that first meeting it's always a shocker. People realize that hey, wait a minute, I didn't realize the ops guys are desperately looking for more hardware and they're not getting it. And we're giving them super CPU intensive code. Oh my God, that's really bad. Had I known, we would have done a better job. And it's little things like that. How do you get new product updates from the software vendor? Boy, that's a good question. At Mattermost, we have I guess you'd say a point release every couple weeks, and then a major release every month. Not all vendors do things the same way. Considering information security, it's very hard to get a release unless you're literally talking to a salesperson. So yeah, I'm not super familiar with how that works, but yeah, if you want to send me an email, it's pj@mattermost.com. I'll find out how we do it and what the best way is to get information on that, Alexi.
Right. So I guess you can also do some kind of re-evaluation of your tools and recheck if there are any updates from time to time. It's how we did it, but I guess there's no golden way to do it.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's just the philosophies. Everyone's kind of taking pieces here and pieces there, and it works differently for every organization. There's no golden hammer.
Yeah,
there's no straight up answer for this.
All right. So next question from Dennis. What is the next telegraph in software development, on your opinion? Quite interesting.
Dennis, if I had answers like that, I would not be awake right now. I'd be on my private jet. What is so I think that the next telegraph, the next big breaker in things is probably going to be, and I know this seems like a trite answer, but it's going to probably be machine learning and AI. If the DevOps philosophy is dedicated to automation, one of the things that we need to do is teach the machines how to work. Do I think we're there yet? No, we're not even close. We're not even anywhere even approaching this. But that said, we get closer every day. I think that what we need to do is divorce ourselves from the idea of what machine learning and AI is from a marketing perspective, because I don't know where you are, Dennis, but in the United States, we have advertisements for IBM's Watson, and they make it seem like Watson can do all these things and interact with you, and it can't. I know, because I worked there a long time ago, and I wasn't supposed to say that I worked there, but not really the point. We have this idea that we're going to be walking up and saying to a computer hey, Siri, I'm pretty sure that you can tell me exactly where I need to go. I mean, come on, Siri can barely answer simple questions. And that's one of the most advanced AIs on the planet right now. So while I think machine learning and AI are the future, I don't think we're anywhere near there yet. But once we can figure that out, once we make it properly work, then I think that we will be able to definitely see huge improvements. And that'll be a long-lasting technology. That'll be the next telegraph.
Yeah. I agree with you. So, for example, GPT-3 is one of the great showcases of AI as well. If you want to see something there. All right, next one. How to combine the main importance message delivery with other significant factors. The horse must be well fed.
See, you know what? You picked up on a lot of things here. This is key. It's not just about saying oh, we've built a thing and it's great. You do have to keep the horse well fed. You can say, I've built the best application in the history of the world. I've solved hunger. And I've built an application that tracks how everybody gets their food and no one has to worry about it ever again. And then you realize that you have one server that's built on it's a used Dell blade sitting in a closet with one Cat5 cable sticking out of it and hoping for the best. That horse is not well fed. That horse is starving to death, and that horse is going to crash. You have to understand your needs. A long time ago, I used to work at a cloud company called Engine Yard. It was pretty cool. You could build an application in Ruby or Node or whatever and launch it to AWS in the cloud really quickly. And one of our companies was Butterball turkeys. I don't know if you know what a Butterball turkey is, but it's basically a turkey that's very popular in the United States. Like it's a major brand. Obviously, they had a huge time of it around the holidays. Up until that point, they would keep two servers, one application server, one database server. And it was super small. And the reason why they did that was because those instances were all they needed about 9-10 months out of the year. Then a few weeks before American Thanksgiving, which is in November, they would say we would like to make it bigger. So they would get through the main database server would get 2 backups just to make sure it could handle load. And they would have 10 application servers because people are looking up recipes and how long does it take to defrost a turkey. And suddenly their website's very popular and very exciting. And they would do that till about the 15th of January because people have turkeys for Thanksgiving and Christmas and maybe on New Year's, maybe there's a few things in between there. But they understood exactly how well fed to keep that horse. They knew they could a little bit starve the horse the rest of the year, but then they had to pork it up as the important things. And that's, I've never known a better understanding of the message delivery, the main importance of the application, and the factors that are underlying. It's really all about paying attention, having a team that understands that it's not just about building something. It's not just about testing something. It's about having something out there in the world and making sure that it's properly fed and cared for. So great question.
Awesome. Right. So next one. I just want to make sure that I understood correctly. Is it common to take some things that works for us and make a philosophy monster? Great wording.
Very creative way of saying that. Yes, that's exactly what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, every company has a different way of doing things. To assume that everyone works the same way would be a huge mistake. So yeah, take what you need from waterfall and let that work for you. Take what you need from agile and let that work for you. Take what you need from DevOps and let that work for you. Maybe, I mean, that's kind of how DevOps got started. Was there was the, you know, a lot of times ops teams were working with the waterfall philosophy and dev teams were working with agile, and DevOps in some ways combines those two things to figure out what works best. And it's about collaboration. So maybe building that monster is exactly what you need to do. Maybe you'll write the next big manifesto that tells us what we're supposed to do. Yeah. The automation of things.
Yeah, I guess with technology changes, like there are a lot more iterations going on, and then you need new pieces and stuff like that. All right. So does artificial intelligence spell doom for the manual tester? So
doom? No, I don't think so. I think we're always going to need a human element. I think that unless you can make an artificial intelligence that is as intelligent, if not more so, than a human, you're always going to need human testing. There's always going to have to be a final line of human testing to understand that what the artificial intelligence produced is correct. It's not just simply a matter of, you know, oh, we throw it into a box and the box makes it work. That's not going to happen. At least not for our future, not for the foreseeable future. I think that's great sci-fi, but I don't think it's very realistic.
Yeah. Also awesome. Is survival of the fittest only for the fastest?
Okay, so that's a little jaded, but in some ways it's true if slightly inaccurate. It's not just survival of the fittest. If it was, Facebook wouldn't be a thing. And the reason why I say that is because Facebook was never the best social platform. What it was the most marketed social platform, and that makes a huge difference. Things like I kind of jokingly mentioned, but Bebo was a great platform. It didn't get nearly the press, so it fell apart. You know, MySpace was brilliant. It taught some people how to code. That was their entryway into code. And yet it fell apart because it didn't have the marketing budget of Facebook. And so it's not just survival of the fittest or survival of the fastest. Being fastest to market is important. But I mean, I'll look at the example that we're most compared to at Mattermost. Slack is not as good. It does not have the powerful tools that we have. But it's the first, and you all know exactly what it is because I just said one word, Slack, and you know exactly how it works. As a matter of fact, Slack wasn't even as good as the thing that it replaced, which was Campfire.
Yeah.
So It's not quite as simple as that. There's a lot that goes into it, and a lot of it involves money.
Yeah, I think it's a combination of a lot of things, and oftentimes like the most money wins. But like,
Yes,
I
it
mean,
does.
it's kind of survival of the fastest, I guess. Like also because like if you're the fastest in the market with the most of money, I don't know. It's like trick question. Awesome. Next one. I see many job positions that name contains DevOps phrase. So is this a misunderstanding of the philosophy, or do you see the real need for such a position?
Yes, and yes. So the misunderstanding of the philosophy is the idea that DevOps is a position or the name of things in some way. Like, they say, oh, we need a DevOps. Beyond that being grammatically incorrect, DevOps is a team. It's never only one person. You could bring in a DevOps expert that will help teach your team DevOps, but it's not just a matter of hiring one person who has DevOps experience. So that's the misunderstanding. But there is a real need for this in tech. Too many companies are working in silos. So maybe you're on the QA team. Ask yourself how often you interact with the developers. If it's not that much, that's probably not good. Ask yourself how often you work with the ops folks. If it's not that much, that's even worse. You have to have an understanding, especially in testing, of all sides of the organization. They're dealing with building the technology. You need to be in contact with nearly everyone to understand not only what it's supposed to do, but what it should be doing moving forward, and what the long-term effects are of any feature or bugs or anything. So it's kind of a matter of understanding that DevOps is the most important thing. So it really is an important need to have people in those positions to organize other folks to make sure that they're talking, facilitating conversations in any organization. Again, my opinion, but I think that does truly work.
Yeah, I see. All right, we have a last question for now from Xenia. I hope I pronounced it right. So, how do you think will actual to save for new philosophies manual specialists? Yeah.
So I think the question here is how safe is it to apply new philosophies to current specialists? I think that anyone has the capability to learn, to expand what their knowledge base is. I think that it's something that you should do slowly and incrementally in an organization. It shouldn't be assumed that everyone's gonna, like, you can't walk in tomorrow and be like, yeah, DevOps, and everybody's like, yeah, cool, or hey, we're doing TDD from now, and all the developers are like, absolutely. That's not going to happen. It's not even a safe way to happen. You can't just flip a switch and expect people to change their behavior. But what we can do is focus on the need, focus on how to incrementally add things. That's the safest way to do it. The first way is like with the first question, we're kind of coming back to the beginning. Talk about DevOps and what that means. Talk about TDD and what that means. What changes would have to take place to really implement those ideas in your organization. See who's willing to discuss them. Watch a couple of conference talks. Have a watch party. See who's interested. Talk about it. This could take a couple months. It could take 3 or 4 months. It could take a whole half a year. But that's the safe way to do it. Build it incrementally. Then just take one thing that you want to change towards that, and change that and see how it goes. Could be that it's not the right solution. But if you don't keep trying, you'll never innovate. You'll never build a better team. You'll never build a better product.
Yeah. Awesome. So, all right, I guess that's it for now. Oh, we have another one coming in. What is your view on distortions of philosophies that come and go? For example, we're doing agile, but we're doing it against a rule. Is this a good trend and something to push innovation, or something wrong that's not letting us innovate fast enough?
Yeah, so agile is always the biggest thing, because people often come into organizations. This happened so many times for me. They're like, agile is the way to go. Cool, let's do agile. Okay, great. I appreciate the enthusiasm. But how are you doing agile? If it's so that I can't get my day-to-day stuff done because I'm in stand-ups and meetings all day, or I'm filling out a Kanban board, or I have so many Jira tickets that I'm buried under them because we have a specific agile way of doing Jira tickets, then I don't think it's valuable. And any part of agile, and if you want to innovate here, you should be allowed to take or leave any part of it. And agile is built for that. Martin Fowler said specifically, like, this is what I think works, but take the parts you need, leave the parts you don't. If you want to innovate, you can take something and change the way that it's done in the literal philosophy. It's okay to do it against the rules, but also be willing to say, this doesn't work. Maybe it's a matter of saying like, hey, listen, every day we have a 20-minute stand-up. Why isn't it 10? Like, this is interfering with my work. I need to stand up and say something. If no one stands up and says something, then there is no innovation. You're just sitting with a stagnant idea. You're just doing things because that's what we've always done. And that's never innovative. There's the idea of doing things wrong is kind of antithetical to innovation. You're going to do things wrong, and that's okay. It's okay to fail. And I know, like, especially with developers, super hard to deal with that concept. I myself wrestle with that every day, but it's okay to fail because then you can see what you did wrong. You can learn from it. And learning from any situation is innovating. You just have to have a team that's willing to be flexible enough to do that.
Yeah. I guess like we need a culture where failing is all right. Like you are allowed to fail. So this is like one of the most important things.
And yeah, beyond being a developer, like sometimes certain cultures just don't allow for that, and it's crazy. But I shouldn't say that. Crazy is the wrong word. It's interesting to see how they actually learn from their mistakes.
Yeah, agree. All right, so that's it, I guess, for the questions for now. So thank you all for joining the talk, and thank you, PJ, for this great talk and great answers. I really enjoyed it. I hope you all did as well. So last thing from me, again, I will remind you that you can win an ebook from Pact for actively participating. Just take action and win something. All right, so that's it from our side. See you all in the next session. Have a nice day, everyone. See you later. Bye. All right. So